Hello everyone, my name's Nathan and welcome to my recommendations for the Steam Halloween sale for 2018. Now, this isn't one of the big yearly sales and it's only on for a couple of days, but that doesn't mean there aren't some great games to be had for a bargain. So today I'm going to be showing you a good mixture of games from huge AAA games to smaller indie gems, and they're going to be divided as always into games under £5, games under £10 and games over £10. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So as it's the Halloween sale, we're going to kick things off with my favourite horror game of the past few years in the form of Outlast. This game has you play as an investigative journalist exploring an old asylum, and as you can imagine, it's not exactly a relaxing experience. Outlast is packed with tension, horrific moments, and of course the odd jump scare, and being a journalist you obviously have no way to fight back, since you're only really armed with your camera and a notebook. So running and hiding are basically your only options. This original Outlast is far better than the sequel in my opinion, and if you're looking for a scare this Halloween, it's on sale for £2.99 or $3.99. Next, we're on to Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, an extremely emotional game about two brothers going on a journey in order to try and save their dying father. Now, this game is not by any means all action or for large parts even any action. Instead, it largely revolves around puzzle solving, using the teamwork between the brothers, and the control method whereby the left stick of the controller controls one brother, while the right stick controls the other. These controls are slightly troublesome, and if you're like me, you'll find yourself tripping over them quite a bit, and they do mean that the game requires a controller to play, but overall this is an incredibly moving game, and it's set in a gorgeous world. So in my opinion, it's an experience well worth the £2.19 or $2.99 price tag. Devil Daggers is next, and sometimes I have a hard time finding the words to describe a game, but not this time. That's because Devil Daggers is a very simple game, but it's also extremely fun. The idea here is simply to survive as long as you can, utilising your movement and your magic daggers to avoid and kill the demonic enemies that are flying at you constantly in greater and greater numbers. The first few times you play the game, you'll probably not survive over a minute, but the joy here is from keeping going back for another run, learning from your previous attempts and trying to beat your own high score and the high scores of others. It's one of those games that you'll say, oh, I'll have one more go, and still be sat there half an hour later. So for just £1.59 or $1.99, I think Devil Daggers is worth a look. On now to a huge open world game in Just Cause 3. This massive playground is one I've recommended before and gives the player a sandbox full of bases, bridges, petrol stations and countless other destructibles for main character Rico Rodriguez to destroy in fun and creative ways. Moving around this beautiful world is a joy too, as Just Cause 3 gives the player a grapple, a parachute and most importantly a wingsuit to allow for some pretty badass aerial maneuvers. There is a story campaign here too for some added value, but most of your enjoyment here will come from your own creativity. And with Just Cause 4 due to launch on December 4th, now is a good time to pick up Just Cause 3 and see if the series is something you'd be into. Just Cause 3 is available for £2.69 or $4.49. Action Henk is next and is a tight platformer that allows you to take control of an old action figure to traverse an impressive array of challenging courses. This game has a great sense of momentum as you'll be required to run, jump and slide your way through levels, and mechanics like wall jumps and spring boosters that send you in every direction add a good amount of variety to tracks to keep the game interesting. There's also Steam Workshop integration here with literally over 1,000 extra levels, so for just £2.74 or $3.74, this may be a simple concept, but it has a surprising depth and plenty of content for your money. Up next, I've decided to put these two games into one section, as I've recommended them before, and they're both well worth the money. It's Deus Ex Human Revolution and Deus Ex Mankind Divided. These RPGs take on the idea of human augmentation and the worries and segregation between so-called naturals and the orgs. For me, this is an incredibly interesting setting, and while there's sometimes a lack of subtlety, I still think overall it's been well pulled off. I think what I really love about these games is the choices they give the player. Sure, you can play as the all guns blazing badass style Adam Jensen if you want to, but equally you can look to find a way around enemies with stealth, or even look to defuse situations without any violence at all. and character upgrades in the form of augmentations can help you persuade people to do what you want them to. Human Revolution is probably the better game here, even if it is dated, but for me, Mankind Divided is still a great game and well worth its £2.99 or $4.49 price tag. But if you want to test the series out before buying into both of these, go with Human Revolution, and it's available for £1.94 or $2.99. Moving on, we have Pony Island, a game that looks to throw the player off and screw with them at every turn. The majority of the gameplay is not about running and jumping with a pony, but instead about trying to hack the game through creepy puzzles and a dark backstory. There's definitely some sinister undertones here, and while I wouldn't describe this as horror, it still fits the Halloween theme pretty well. I don't want to give too much away here, as a lot of the joy of this game is figuring out what's going on at every turn for yourself, so I'll just say that as the cheapest game on this list, at £1.31 or $1.64, I think Pony Island is a good buy. Next, we're on to SteamWorld Heist, a turn-based 2D strategy game that has you take control of a crew of robot space pirates, and I don't think there's a cooler combination of words than that. And you'll be leading them through challenging missions utilising each character's different playstyles and abilities. Interesting mechanics add to the game as well, such as the ricocheting shots that can bounce off a wall and then hit enemies square in the face, and that leads to some great moments and trick shots. And if you don't like the usual RNG that you'd get in a turn-based strategy game, you'll be pleased to see the active aiming system in play here that allows for much more reliable hits on the enemy. SteamWorld Heist is on sale for £3.62 or $4.94. On to the penultimate game for this section then, and I've gone for something a bit more light-hearted and casual in the form of Golf It. This mini golf game is a great one to just take it easy and play for half an hour without getting stressed out in any way. Now, some people may not like the control method of having to bring back your mouse and then push it forward to hit the ball, as it's a bit imprecise. But so long as you're not too bothered about losing the odd stroke or two, it works pretty well, and the Steam Workshop integration means there's plenty of courses to keep you going. The game is also improved a lot if you have a couple of friends to play with. You can turn collision on and then really mess with each other as well, which is great fun. And while it might not be a game for everyone, at £3.29 or $4.94, Golf It is just a nice simple bit of fun. Finally then for this section we come to Mad Max. Another huge open world game with plenty of content to keep you playing for hours upon hours, and I feel it's been a bit overlooked over the years, with other massive open world games getting the attention instead. So why should Mad Max stand out? Well, the unique selling point is definitely the cars, and that's because you can build your own car, customizing its individual parts, and then take it out on the roads for some really meaty car combat. Once you get out of the car, this is a pretty decent brawler too, which offers a nice change of pace, but the car combat is the real star of the show here. This game is also extremely well optimized, and although its post-apocalyptic world is rather empty compared to some of the jam-packed worlds we're used to, there's still plenty to do here, and for just £3.99 or $4.99, if you're up for a bit of car combat, Mad Max might be worth a look. Starting us off in the under £10 category then, I've gone for Darkest Dungeon, a turn-based RPG that will have your team of adventurers delving deep into horrific places and fighting grotesque monsters. The art style here is fantastic, and the narrator is one of the best of any game series, giving Darkest Dungeon an amazing atmosphere. The combat too requires a good amount of thought and preparation, as you'll have to have your team in the right positions in order to maximise their effectiveness, and the stress mechanic whereby your team can die not through being hit by enemies, but by being too unnerved by what's happening around them adds another layer to the combat and another thing for you to worry about. Speaking of things for you to worry about, you'll find yourself managing food and light to make sure there are no nasty surprises. For me, the best part of the game though is the characters that develop, as each one of your heroes can develop character traits that can be good or bad. Whether it's stealing some of your treasure every time they find it, or being buffed against a certain enemy type, it gives each character their own personality and makes you care about whether they live or die. Coming in at just £5.69 or $7.49, I think Darkest Dungeon is one of the very best deals of the sale. The Sexy Brutale is next, and this game will have you reliving the same day over and over in order to change events and stop the murders that are taking place. This time-traveling puzzler will have you figuring new things out every time you go back as you watch the movement patterns of the other characters and look for that key piece of information that will prevent the next murder. Timing is key here, as you'll have to do things in the right order and quickly enough that you don't get caught, as you need to stay out of sight of the other characters. And there's something extremely satisfying about seeing the ways in which you changed events. Usually in a game or a film, you'll only get to see one outcome, but in the Sexy Brutale, you get to see what would have happened without your intervention and then see how you can change events. The visuals and soundtrack in this one are great too, and at £7.49 or $9.99, I'd recommend giving the Sexy Brutale a look. Next up is Dark Souls 3, and I confess to not being a very good Dark Souls player myself, but I certainly see the appeal of the series, and Dark Souls 3 is no exception. This game has a beautiful and interesting world with an extremely rich lore behind it, and that challenging Dark Souls combat is back once again as you'd expect. If you're new to the series, you will die a lot, especially to some of the bosses, but all the time you're keenly aware that these bosses are beatable, and that if you keep plugging away, you'll eventually find a way through. And the feeling of satisfaction and overwhelming relief in my case, when you actually finally beat that one big boss that's murdered you over and over again, is just brilliant. Dark Souls 3 is on sale for £9.99 or $14.99. Moving on, we have Worms WMD. This game takes the classic Worms formula of turn-based combat with crazy weapons and adds to it with even more stupid and insane ways to kill your enemies. Honestly, it's not a revolution for the series, and if you've played a Worms game before, you'll know full well what to expect here. But if you can get a few friends round, this is the perfect game for stupid moments, hilarious custom worm names, and bizarre kills that will definitely put a smile on your face. There is a campaign here too, which acts a bit like a tutorial, but the real meat of this game comes when played with friends. I wouldn't recommend this one usually at full price, but for £6.79 or $10.19, there's a lot of fun to be had with Worms WMD. Prey is next, and this atmospheric sci-fi game will have you exploring a spaceship overrun by an alien species that can shapeshift. This mechanic means you never feel truly safe in Prey. You can walk into a room and the coast seems to be clear, but the next second that coffee cup on the table morphs into an enemy. And because of this, you'll always have your guard up, and that leads to a great sense of tension. The upgrade tree offers numerous ways of helping to fight these enemies off, allowing you to focus on your guns, or find new paths, or even set up traps for enemies in the form of hacked turrets. A nice variety of guns adds to the game as well, especially the glue cannon, which freezes enemies in place, so you can do damage to them without getting in harm's way yourself. And this will be almost essential for some of the tougher enemies in the game. I personally love the alt history setting of the game too, and if you take your time to explore, you'll get some fascinating little nuggets of info, such as JFK surviving the assassination attempt in this version of history. All in all, Prey is an excellent game, and well worth the £9.99 or $14.99 price tag. On to the next to last game for this section, and I've chosen The Final Station. This beautiful post-apocalyptic game is largely divided into two parts: on the train and off the train. While you're on the train, you'll be tasked with resource management, helping to keep all of your passengers alive and keeping your train running smoothly. Then off the train, you'll be asked to explore each location that the train stops at, looking for supplies, survivors, and whatever else useful you can find, all while trying not to get killed yourself. The progression of the world is fantastic too, as every stop you get to seems to be in worse condition than the last, and it all adds to the dark feeling that builds as the game goes on. The Final Station may not be the longest game, but I massively enjoyed my time with it, and at £5.49 or $7.49, I feel it's worth picking up. And finishing us off for the under £10 section is Shadow Warrior 2. This fast-paced first-person shooter does not take itself seriously at all, with main character Lo Wang the epitome of this, as he's always quick with a joke, and throughout the game he's constantly using an array of absurd weapons. For the most part, this is a game where you can just dive into the action and have fun shooting, slicing and mauling every enemy in sight. But those enemies do have different strengths and weaknesses, and you can mess around and tinker with your gun for days, adding new effects to it and making it more powerful. So if you want to put a bit more thought into the game and hit that enemy who's weak to fire with that Uzi that you just customized to spit flames, well, go right ahead. It'll bring him down a lot faster, and it's great fun too. The campaign can be played solo, but can also be played in co-op as well, and it's a brilliantly chaotic experience when played with friends, even if some of the early cutscenes drag on a bit too long for co-op play in my opinion. For £8.74 or $9.99, Shadow Warrior 2 is a good amount of stupid, over-the-top fun. On then to our final section, games over £10, and I want to start with A Hat in Time. This cutesy 3D platformer will have you travelling to several different worlds, each with their own theme that keeps the game fresh and interesting. My personal favourite level is Murder on the Owl Express, where inquisitive crows will ask you seemingly innocent questions that all somehow lead to getting your security info out of you. Honestly, there's just so many great ideas in this game, and with new hats and badges opening up new areas in old worlds and levels, there's even reasons to go back and carry on exploring. I feel like some people will get a bit put out by this statement, but I think this is the closest thing to Super Mario Odyssey that you can get on PC, and I absolutely love it. Now, the platforming and controls may not be quite as precise and tight as the aforementioned Odyssey, although they're plenty tight enough, and the level of polish is not quite the same, but this game has such great character and creativity, not to mention a fantastic soundtrack, so I cannot recommend it highly enough. A Hat in Time is on sale for £13.79 or $17.99. Hand of Fate 2 is next. This deck builder takes place mainly as a card game where you move your character around a board of cards, turning them over and discovering what fate awaits you. Often these are story sections that will require you to play some kind of minigame to determine success or failure. Sometimes though, these card events will suck you down into combat. And these combat sections are a little tedious, and nowhere near as enjoyable as the card game. But they aren't too annoying and generally don't last too long, so it's not a huge issue. Now, the cards in the game are determined partially by what scenario you're playing and partially by the deck you build, meaning you can determine your own difficulty, putting in easier cards that will help you or harder cards that will give you greater reward. And even once the game starts, you can choose whether or not you want to take the risk of a tricky game in order to get a bigger reward, or just leave it. If you do take that risk and succeed, however, you'll be more powerful for this and future quests. Fail though, and death is a real possibility. Hand of Fate 2 has so much to offer, and even though there is a significant amount of RNG involved in the game, for me it never detracted from the fun. So despite Hand of Fate being the most expensive base game on this list, at £17.84 or $22.49, I still think it's more than worth the price. Readout Enhanced Edition is next, and this stylish racing game draws massive inspiration from titles such as F-Zero and Wipeout. The sense of speed here is what makes the gameplay so exhilarating, knowing that if you get a few corners in a row right, you can be absolutely whizzing through the race. But doing that is not easy. Unlike a lot of other races, pressing the brakes is very much discouraged, and proper maneuvering will require players to use both sticks on the controller, as you'll not only need to steer, but also strafe to get around tight corners at high speeds. And you'll also have to raise your nose so it doesn't scrape along the floor when going uphill. Now, there is online multiplayer here, but it's not particularly populated, so for the most part you'll have to make do with racing against the AI. The good news is though, that is still a great deal of fun. Readout is available for £11.99 or $13.99. On now to a bit of a controversial one in the form of Middleearth Shadow of War. This sequel to the extremely well received Shadow of Mordor attempted to take the Nemesis system from that game that gave every enemy a unique personality and then add to it. And I've certainly seen people who disagree with me here, but in my opinion, they just about achieved it. Sure, it's not a particularly new concept anymore, and the Nemesis system has lost some of its surprise, but the variety of enemies, types and factions keep this game interesting for me, and the new mechanic of assaulting a fortress is also a lot of fun. You can choose to attack straight away, or you can slowly take out the captains and disable some of the defences, making your assault far easier, and then you get to lead the attack from the front with your army of orcs and trolls. Now, the story isn't anything to write home about here, and if you're not into the Nemesis system, or simply don't want to give Warner Bros your money after they tried to monetize the hell out of this game, I completely understand, and at full price I would agree it's not worth it. But for £11.89 or $16.99, there's potentially 20 or more hours here of orc mind controlling and orc killing, and I think that's worth the price. Nearly at the end now, and I'll keep this one brief as I always recommend it. It's The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt Game of the Year Edition. This massive RPG is filled with brilliant quests with basically no filler. The base game alone has potentially hundreds of hours of great gameplay, but the Game of the Year edition also bags you the Blood and Wine and Hearts of Stone expansions, and in my opinion they could easily be standalone games in their own right. This is my favourite game of all time, and if you haven't tried it yet, I implore you, do yourself a favour and pick this one up now for £13.99 or $19.99. Finally then, we come to the XCOM 2 collection. XCOM 2 is a turn-based strategy game that has you fighting to take back your planet from an occupying alien force. You'll have to manage your base, upgrade your soldiers, and fight intense battles with the enemy in order to secure victory. Mechanics added into XCOM 2 that weren't in the 2012 XCOM, such as the ambush mechanic, give you new ways to achieve that, as you can set it up so that the second the first shot is fired, all of your soldiers fire too, and often this kills the initial wave of enemies before they can respond. The XCOM 2 collection though not only gets you this brilliant base game, but also all of the cosmetic DLC and most importantly, the War of the Chosen DLC, which adds so much to the game, including 3 new factions each with their own unique mechanics, and also new powerful enemies in the form of the Chosen, and just so much more. I would recommend playing through the base XCOM 2 on its own first though before trying out War of the Chosen, as it's kind of difficult to go back to the base game after trying all the cool stuff they added in. At the heart of XCOM 2 though and War of the Chosen is your soldiers and the ability to name them, customize them and upgrade them, making you genuinely care about them, and that's what I really love about the XCOM series. The XCOM 2 collection comes in at £30.86 or $39.92. So there you have it, the Steam Halloween Sale 2018. Obviously these are just my recommendations and the sale is over on November 1st, so if you think I missed something or you have your own recommendations, please leave them down in the comments to help others find themselves a great deal. If you enjoyed this video or found it useful, I'd be very appreciative if you'd click that like button below and subscribe for more like this in the future. Anyway, thanks for watching, I've been Nathan and I'll see you next time.